Your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, allhurricanes.com writer, and co-host of Locked On ACC. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. So, is Miami now considered the favorite for five-star Zephyr Hills, Florida defensive back and Miami legacy DJ Pickett? Now, if you go by some of the recruiting site trends, not now, at least not quote-unquote officially. I say quote-unquote officially because who the heck knows before the young man actually puts pen to paper in December for National Signing Day. But if you go by the On3 Sports RPM rankings, Miami does sit with a higher percentage, but actually below LSU, who they currently consider to be the favorite. And by the way, also on today's episode, we're going to talk about Miami ranked perhaps shockingly low, but some of you may love this, but Miami ranked shockingly low on the Pro Football Focus power rankings for the upcoming 2024 football season. We have some good news on recruiting trends and some bad news. One of my favorite wide receivers in this class has announced today he's no longer taking an official visit to Miami. We'll vent about that a little bit, but we do see some positive trends with DJ Pickett. Based on the sentiments that I get, I'd probably rank Miami as at least a slight favorite right now for the five-star defensive back. Miami likes him as a long cornerback, by the way, if he does end up coming to the U. I think most schools are recruiting him as a cornerback. He can also play safety. He's very versatile. There's a reason why he's considered to be the top recruit in the entire state of Florida, and I think Miami made a significant move for him over the weekend when the top player in the state came for a visit. He visited this from On3 Sports, visited with key family members. By the way, some of those family members are friends of the show, and to my understanding, the visit went very well for DJ, and that it's not over yet, but he can definitely see himself comfortably enrolling and playing at the University of Miami. DJ Pickett, by the way, he doesn't plan on offering a verbal commitment until October 5th. Obviously, the verbal is not National Signing Day. You can't sign your national letter of intent until early December, but the timing is interesting. So, Miami may have made a significant move for DJ over this past weekend. Oregon is going to get an opportunity to do the same when he visits the Ducks this coming weekend, but he's not actually going to verbally commit until there's a few games in the books, right? So, for example, how Miami does against Florida to open the season could weigh in on DJ's decision. How Miami does, obviously, there's a few non-conference games in there, including a showdown game against USF. That's probably going to be more difficult than probably a lot of people realize. I don't think the USF game is an automatic win. That will be a tough road game. Miami's game against Virginia Tech will also be before DJ Pickett offers a verbal commitment. So he's going to need to see some proof on the field to reinforce how he's feeling about Miami right now. But Steve Wiltfong from On3 Sports spoke with DJ Pickett's father, Damian. Now, remember, his father, Damian Pickett, is the brother of former Miami Hurricanes player Booker Pickett Sr., who played at Miami in the 90s. DJ Pickett is the cousin of Booker Pickett Jr., who was just enrolled at Miami. He's also the cousin of Canon Pickett, who's a class of 2026 offensive lineman who loves Miami. Obviously, we're a ways away from the class of 2026, but I feel pretty good about where Miami stands with Canon. We'll see if Miami does well with DJ. So Pickett's father said Miami was good. He told Steve Wiltfong it felt like home. It was good. A lot of positive stuff. Nothing negative about this trip. Very good trip, he says. Asked about some of the other things that stand out about Miami aside from the football stuff, he said the academics. They always keep on that. The fact that the classes and the facility stuff is right there together, he said. Also, he mentioned, did DJ Pickett's father, hearing how the players get along, talking to my nephew and a couple of other kids. They seem to be so happy and eager for what they put together down there. The Pickett family, Wiltfong writes, believes in head coach Mario Cristobal. He's a Miami guy, Pickett said. I believe he wants what's best for the University of Miami. He's an alum. his track record other places, he's gotten better every year. Miami has all the resources. You recruit South Florida and recruit Florida. That's 3/4 of the battle, he said. He, being Cristobal, is a Miami guy, and he has a vision for Miami. He also said the way that they're going about this rebuild, he says there is a lot of negative about the portal and all that stuff, but seeing how they're going about it, I feel good about Miami moving forward. So, again, DJ Pickett. It's funny because we talked about some of the trends if you go by the various websites. A lot of folks like On3 Sports RPM tracker, which, by the way, is very far from an exact science. They go by the amount of RPM ratings and the sentiments of all their local writers. So they do consider LSU to be a favorite and Miami in second place. I think maybe, Oregon is probably doing a little bit better there than people realize. And again, DJ is going to be visiting Oregon, I believe, this coming weekend. So even if Miami has now set the bar or raised the bar, Oregon has an opportunity to try to raise that even higher. But folks, if Miami can continue to trend with DJ up until his announcement coming up on October 5th, there's obviously a lot of work to do between now and October 5th. And then there's even more work to do between October 5th and National Signing Day and the first Wednesday of December. But, if Miami can keep this one trending, this is one of the absolute most important recruits in the class. You've got the top player in the state happens to be a legacy, right? His cousin plays for Miami now. His uncle played for Miami in the past. So you have the legacy factor. You do have the location factor. And it's interesting to note that, that there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of traction, or at least as much. I think Florida could maybe try to get in the mix, but there's not as much traction from the other in-state schools. If you're talking about trying to keep him, quote unquote, home or closer to home, from places like Oregon and places like LSU. Geography all obviously plays a factor, keeping him a little bit closer to where the family sits. And the fact that Miami really, really wants to reinforce their defensive backfield for years to come. And, Miami has had a lot of close but no cigars with recent 5-star cornerbacks. I mean, they came very close to Cormani McClain a couple of cycles ago, who may end up not living up to his 5-star status. But that was one Miami came really close on. There have been others. I can't think of the last, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think maybe the last 5-star corner Miami landed, was it Tracy Howard like a decade ago? Was there someone in between that I'm forgetting? But it's been a long time. They've landed obviously some very high level 4-stars like Damari Brown. I would consider that guy a blue chipper. Miami landed a couple of cycles ago, but since they've actually landed a bona fide 5-star cornerback, it's been a little while for that. And so this is a position of need. One of the top players in the country, the top player in the state. He's got the family ties to Miami. He lives geographically close, not too far from Miami, that is. This is such an important recruit that I'd love to see Miami to continue to grab momentum for before his announcement on October 5th. Now, as far as some of the things that makes Mario Cristobal different as a recruiter, because you'll notice everybody who comes through Miami, obviously you don't get everybody, but even the players Miami doesn't land, we'll talk about the family atmosphere. They'll talk about the little things that Coach Cristobal and his staff do to go the extra mile. Some of those little extra touches that Mario Cristobal does to really make these visitors and these recruits feel special. And some of the extra steps that guys like Kevin Beard and Jason Taylor, all the great assistant coaches on the staff, the little extra touches that they'll do to really relate to these players. Now, Gerard Pringle, who just visited, who is a Miami commit, the 4-star running back, isn't being recruited by anyone else at this point. He shut it down. I mean, other schools may try to recruit him, but Gerard Pringle has completely shut down his recruitment. He is a Miami player. Now, Pringle, the 4-star running back, he was on with my friend Larry Bluestein, was interviewed on Blue's show last night. I didn't hear this live, but I got a text last night from Larry because he knew I'd be very interested to hear this story. So Gerard Pringle, he was on the South Florida High School Sports Show with Larry Bluestein, and he said this about Cristobal, quote, "The thing that meant most to me was Coach Cristobal walking with me at 11 p.m. to go get ice cream. At other schools, they would just send some guy to do it. That told me I was at the right place." So when you're talking about creating a family atmosphere, really relating to these players, going the extra mile, these are the sorts of touches that Mario Cristobal and his staff have with these recruits that really paints Miami in a good light on these visits. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that every recruiting trend has been positive, right? There's some very good and some not so good for Miami right now. That includes a class of 2026 quarterback who we really like verbally committing elsewhere. And it includes a class of 2025 wide receiver who's one of my favorites in this class, announcing today he's no longer taking a Miami visit. We'll talk about that when we come back. My friends, we're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. You want to keep it locked. And if you're a small business owner, I know you're only getting started with LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Hey, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Now, something else with DJ Pickett that I thought was cool. I mentioned, he's got the two cousins that are sons of Booker Sr. who played at Miami. You got Booker Pickett Jr., who enrolled at Miami this summer, playing defensive end here, doing really well in off-season workouts, I should say. And then Booker Jr.'s younger brother, Canon, is a top offensive lineman in the class of 2026. Now, Canon, he's not verbally committed, at least not yet, to Miami, but he loves Miami. And I saw Canon Pickett over the weekend put out a graphic of his brother, Booker Sr., and his cousin, DJ Pickett, all wearing Miami uniforms. And that would be cool if in a couple of years they can make that a reality, that they're all playing with Miami together. I would absolutely love that. But going again to the not so good. Not all the recruiting trends are positive right now. Shortly before we went live here, I see this X post from 4-star wide receiver out of Homestead High School in Homestead, Florida. Cortez Mills wrote the following: "I am no longer taking an official visit to Miami," he said. That hurts me. It does. We'll talk about the factors here that possibly led to this. But it hurts me because Cortez, he's not only one of my favorite players in the class of 2025, one of my favorite wide receivers anyway. You talk about being at a local area high school, and, I'm not saying Homestead High is as important as some of the other pipelines out there, like the Miami Centrals and the Chaminads and the American Heritage of the world. But, you talk about a player, top local player from a pipeline high school. He's not taking his Miami official visit. As to why that could be happening, number one factor is I've got to give credit where credit is due. Clemson has in recent weeks been absolutely surging for Cortez Mills. Clemson has made him a priority. Whatever Dabo Swinney is running in that recruiting pitch, Cortez seems to really be taking to it. I mean, something that, this is a double-edged sword for Clemson, but the fact that they literally don't take transfers may not be the best thing for immediate on-field results, but the fact that Dabo Swinney does not take transfers into his program is also an appealing recruiting pitch, because anytime you talk to a high school player, you say, well, we're going to strictly focus on developing you. We're not going to recruit over you because we will not take any transfers. We haven't done it. We're not going to bring in somebody at your position to replace you. And listen, I think that, again, I think the net result of that is not going to be good for Clemson's program, because in this day and age, you do need transfers, I believe, but it's a powerful recruiting pitch. And maybe that could be a factor for Cortez. And, we revisit something that was said on this program last week, and we're going to be talking to Brian Smith again this Thursday. But when we had our recruiting overlord on last week, he mentioned he had heard, I cannot confirm this, but he had heard that, for whatever reason, Miami at that point wouldn't take a commitment from Cortez Mills. Maybe they're focusing on some other receivers that they're prioritizing first. Again, I cannot confirm that, but Smith did drop that, and maybe what he said is reinforced by this, that Mills is not going to be taking a Miami official visit. And, on how the trends have been going for him, I strongly expect him to commit to Clemson. And I wonder if he may have already silently committed to Clemson, because another thing that Dabo Swinney does not allow is when he's got players committed to Clemson, whether it's an outright commitment or what we call a silent commit. A silent commit is when a player has told the coaching staff, I'm in. He just hasn't announced it yet. If it is a silent commitment, Dabo Swinney does not allow his commits to take other visits. That's a hard no. If you take another visit, he will drop you. So you have to wonder, did Cortez Mills maybe already silently commit to Clemson? And that might be why he has canceled his Miami visit. So you can apparently cross Cortez Mills off the list, unfortunately. Another one that stung some people. I do think that there may be some people who don't realize this young man is actually a year and a half away from being able to sign a national letter of intent. So this one's a marathon, not a sprint. But American Heritage star quarterback Dia Bell, son of former NBA player Raja Bell, local player, really good quarterback. Dia Bell has actually verbally committed to Texas. I've seen this young man multiple times on unofficial visits to Miami. So I know Miami's been recruiting him pretty hard. This is a player the Hurricanes really liked, but he's already verbally committed to the Longhorns. But again, it's like when I talk about 2025 verbal commitments, a lot of you are in the comments are like, who cares? 6 months away from national letter of intent. Like anything can happen in the next 6 months. With Dia Bell, you're literally talking about 12 months plus 6 months. You're talking about 18 months, class of 2026, until he can put pen to paper. So take it for what it is. He's verbally committed to Texas right now. I know a lot of Miami fans are disappointed about that. So that's some not so good news and trends in recruiting. But a couple of other players that Miami, we talked about DJ Pickett at the top of the show. A couple of other players Miami is really pursuing. Chris Ewald Jr., who's another really important defensive back, and Ewald, cornerback out of Chaminade. It's another really important pipeline program to Miami. Miami, of course, struck gold out of Chaminade in the 2024 cycle with Josiah Trader and with Zaquan Patterson. They love to add Chris Ewald to that family as well. Here's what he told Kane Sport after his visit. Ewald was just on campus this past weekend. It was a great official visit. He was hosted by Daryl Porter Jr., by the way. He said, a great last impression. Miami left off before I make my final decision. And his final decision, we're not going to have to wait long for Ewald for his verbal, one way or the other. He's going to be committing somewhere on June 27th. So in less than 2 weeks, in less than nine days from now? What day is it today? I got that wrong last week. Remember, it was Thursday. I thought it was Friday. I'm pretty sure today is Tuesday, and I'm pretty sure we are just over a week away from Ewald making an announcement. Now, for Ewald, it's coming down between Miami and Georgia. That's the final two, and the Georgia visit is upcoming, so Miami's going to have to fend off the Bulldogs. He said, quote, the main thing that I felt was the love that they're constantly shown at Miami, Ewald said. I really appreciate them for that, talking about Miami staff. He's the number 162 overall prospect in the On3 rankings, number 20 cornerback in the 2025 cycle. He said every coach was interacting with the players, adding that his parents also left impressed. He said they loved it. They were here for me. He said they're making sure I'm happy. If I'm happy, they're happy. They were just supporting, he said. He said that one of the highlights of the trip was Mario Cristobal's house. He says the coaches stressed to him, see it for yourself. Yep. Coach, I'm still waiting for my invite. I haven't seen the whole tour of the house. I've seen some of the social media photos and videos that go out there. He's got a very lush patio and backyard and pool area. I've seen guys, playing dominoes, playing poker back there. So apparently Mario Cristobal's house and the food that gets served there always makes a great impression always makes great impressions, I should say, on these recruits, and that was the highlight for Ewald. The recruitment for 5-star wide receiver Dallas Wilson, that stays very interesting. Now, remember, he's been committed to Oregon for a year and a half. He's been verbally committed to the Ducks. Miami's been putting tons of effort into trying to flip Dallas Wilson, from Oregon to Miami. Remember, we just talked about a receiver that has canceled a Miami visit, Dallas Wilson. He went through with the Miami visit despite being verbally committed to Oregon. Gabby Urrutia at 24/7 did note that, quote, "My understanding is that Wilson following through with Oregon is a very real possibility." So most of us agree that Miami is the biggest threat to flip, that if it's not Oregon, Miami has a better chance than anyone else. But apparently, for a lot of folks out there thinking that Wilson may not stick with the Ducks, that sentiment is starting to change to say, quote unquote, it's a real possibility that he could end up sticking with his Oregon commitment. Let me see if there's, by the way, I do want to, among other things, I want to make an announcement for the show later today because we will have another episode today. I took a 4-day weekend. Shame on me. I had a nice Father's Day weekend trip. I allowed my 6-year-old with ADHD. I allowed him to completely run me ragged. I'm all out of gas. I'm exhausted, but I am back. And since I missed 4 days, we're going to do an extra episode later on today. We'll talk about that, and we'll talk about Miami's, I think, shocking location in the Pro Football Focus college power rankings. You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. And I'm certainly not done yet on FanDuel. Folks, summertime means baseball, and it means at least one more game for the Stanley Cup Finals. I think it's going to be one last game tonight. NBA is over, but we have soccer. I've been betting on Euro 2024. We're having so much fun at FanDuel. And right now, new customers get $200 you can use to bet on everything from the finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. Because yes, $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet right now at FanDuel. We've been making a living during the Stanley Cup playoffs on Florida Panthers money lines. Didn't work out so well in Game 4. We'll get them back here in Game 5. Florida Panthers tonight in what could be the decisive game of the Stanley Cup Finals. They got a 3-1 lead in the series. Panthers are minus 140 favorites on the money line. They're also goal and a half favorites at plus 190. So if you think the Panthers are going to close it out and hoist the cup on home ice tonight, you can get all of that action, my friends, on FanDuel. It is going down. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. So going over, I can't wait till we're actually playing football, my friends, because we've seen so many of these way too early rankings, preseason power rankings, projected rankings coming out. Most of these way too earlys, like ESPN and CBS Sports and the like. Most of these have Miami in the low 20s for this upcoming season, just like a fringe top 25 team. Now, last week, we talked about the Phil Steele College Football Magazine being more bullish on Miami than anyone else. Phil Steele, in both his power rankings and his power ratings, had Miami number 10 inside the top 10, very high. Now, another one has come out this week. Pro Football Focus. And I was, not that it means anything. And a lot of you will probably be happy to hear this because you prefer the us against the world mentality. You want the media to count Miami out. You want the expectations to be low because you want to prove them wrong. And you want the team to have that chip on the shoulder, the bulletin board material and all that. Now, before PFF, Pro Football Focus, before they put out their power rankings, I actually expected them to have Miami maybe in the top 15, top 20 at the very least, because guys, every time we see these PFF position group rankings, they show a lot of love to Miami. Top 10 offensive line, top 10 defensive line, top 10 edge rushers, top 10 running back rotation, top 10 wide receiver room. They're pretty high on Cam Ward, as everyone's pretty high on Cam Ward. So Yeah, I kept seeing Miami with all their various position groups being, top 10 according to Pro Football Focus. And then their power rankings come out, and Miami is ranked number 31. So that could mean a couple of different things. Number one, it can mean there's a real disconnect with how they rank their players versus how they rank their teams. I know that they try to use analytical formulas, or the other option is, and this is definitely a narrative. It's definitely a narrative that Miami needs to disprove or at least put to bed this coming season, is that the coaching, this is the narrative, the coaching is not going to get the most out of this talent. That's a prevalent narrative. Mario Cristobal will probably never live down the knee that he didn't take last season, but that's the narrative that's been out there. And if Pro Football Focus can rank so many different Miami position groups, top 10 in the country, certainly top 10 in the conference, and then come out and rank Miami number 31 in their power rankings, I've got to think that disconnect probably comes with them not believing in Coach Cristobal and not believing that Miami is going to get the most out of their talent. So I wonder. And listen, Miami, I've seen Miami ranked again anywhere from number 10 to number 31 before the season begins. None of that's going to matter come August 31st, because that's when you have a chance to prove it on the football field. That's when you're going to see and by the way, we're 74 days away. Doesn't feel like that long when you put it out there in those terms. 2.5 months, basically. 74 days away. You're 2.5 months from Miami taking that field in the swamp. It's going to be 3:30 p.m., so it's going to be humid. It's going to be disgusting out there. Like, quite frankly, it's going to be humid. It's going to be swampy, but that's when you're going to see Cam Ward, Damian Martinez take the field for the first time in Miami uniforms, and that's when you have an opportunity to either prove their narratives correct, that, hey, you got talent, but they just can't connect and they can't coach. You can either prove their narratives correct, or you can go out there, just beat the brakes out of the Florida Gators and show them that this is a different Miami and this is a different culture. By the way, I want to thank everyone who's joined us here live. We are live on our YouTube channel, Locked On Canes. So you want to smash that thumbs up button, smash that like button, and subscribe to Locked On Canes on YouTube. If you listen to the audio version, make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. This is not going to be our only episode today. Later today, late afternoon, we're going to have the Truth Teller on for a Truth Teller Tuesday, but he's going to be bringing Melvin Bratton with him. Yes, former legendary and national championship winning Miami Hurricanes running back Mel Bratton is going to be joining the show later on today. Before there was Damian Martinez, there was Melvin Bratton. I'm really excited. And Melvin, by the way, something I'm interested to talk to him about, because, I know that he was recruited back in the 80s, which was before we had the 24/7s and the on-3s and stuff. Recruiting was not very public back then. I would love to know what the official visit process was for him. What other schools did he see? What other schools did he visit? He had a difficult start to his professional career, because in his final collegiate game, he blew out his knee in the national championship game against Oklahoma. And that, cost him a year in the NFL. He was drafted by the Miami Dolphins, but then they didn't go through with signing him because of his injury. Then he was drafted again a year later. So that was a tough one. I see our guy Chill is trying to debunk Melvin Bratton is a real Cane. Melvin Bratton is as real as they come, and he's going to be joining us later on today. So smash that like button. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and keep it locked right here. We'll have another episode later today of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.